I'm inspired by every activist I've ever met, everyone I've stood shoulder by shoulder with on an action. I love them. That's why I want to have these encounters with them, for us to open our hearts together and to tell their story. Hi, I'm Mark Skipper, and you're entering A World Gone Good.
Well, hello, my name's Steve, and this is the place where we shine the light on everyday people making good happen each and every day. Welcome to World Gone Good. This right here that you're about to listen to is part 2 of our conversation with Mark Skipper, the environmental activist artist behind Faces of Rebellion. Before you take part in today's episode, ask yourself this question: have I heard part 1 yet? If the answer is no, nope, or nuh-uh, go back one episode wherever you are joining us right now and give it a listen. You'll be oh so glad you did. Okay, before we dive in here, I want to point this out for you. Just something to consider while listening. What are you doing? You, yes you, right now to make a difference in your world / our world? What talent do you possess that you can share with your world / our world? And know this, just listen to this. Your talent doesn't require you being some master painter or music composer or IT coding genius. Your talent can simply be putting yourself out there, showing up, and supporting projects that already exist, that are already happening. Your talent can be transforming your corner of the world, your home, into a place that's one step closer to being better for you and everyone around you. And here comes some Steve's suggestions. Watch out. Go get you a rain barrel that can fill up right from one of your gutter pipes. I got one. It's awesome. And did you know some states, including my home state of California, give you a rebate if you send them a copy of your rain barrel receipt? Start composting. We did an entire show with the queen of compost, my pal, Michelle Yan. Like the rebate for the rain barrel, some towns and cities actually supply them at a reduced cost. They want you to do this. You know, here in Santa Barbara, you can get a $90 composter for half price up at our city dump on, wait for it, City Dump Road. That's the actual name of the damn street. I'd kid you not. But Steve, I don't have a place to put a rain barrel or a composter. Okay, all right, I hear you. How about this? Walk. Why not walk somewhere? Or get a bike and ride it, or use public transportation, even 1 or 2 days a week. Making this change makes a substantial difference, and you're going to save gas money. And you know, I'm holding back right now on the whole vegan thing. It's taking everything in me because I talk way too much about it. I know. But Meatless Mondays, OMD as well. 1 meal a day. That's what OMD stands for. Plant-based. The difference you can make for the planet, the animals, and your own health. None of these options work for you. Cross your arms like I'm not doing any of those things. All right, call your mother. Call my mother. She would love it. She'll talk to anyone about pretty much anything. Just call her. She'll answer the phone. Just start talking. She'll answer. And guess what? She has an opinion on everything. Here's the point. As our guest today will tell you, one person can make only so much difference. It's when all the ones start adding up that big change happens. You are one. I am one. Together, we are many. Here comes the second part of our oh-so-good chat with good guest, Mark Skipper. Has your art always been this kind of venue for you? Has it been something that is communicative? Has it been something that's connective? Or has it evolved?
Thanks. Great question. It hasn't really always been there. Like a lot of people, I drew when I was a kid, and I started studying art at school, but I was also doing maths physics and computer science. And at some point, school advised me to quit the art in order to concentrate on those other subjects. And so it kind of went away. Occasionally, when I was traveling, I would have a notebook with me for practical reasons, and some sketches would appear in that notebook, but I didn't think of it as a thing that I did. And then I got into journaling, and I just loved the experience of making marks. But I like skipped forward a long way. Journaling happened in my 50s somewhere, I think. And out of that, I thought it would be nice to draw again. And I started drawing. I did, the Inktober online challenge. You heard that?
No.
Okay, so this is you can check it out afterwards. It's a big internet phenomenon where you make one ink sketch per day throughout the month of October and share it online with some hashtags. And it's encouraging people to do that. There are Facebook sharing groups centered around it, but I never joined them. But I took the challenge and said, let's make an ink drawing every day. And I did that a couple of years and not much else. Just, this challenge is going on. And then one year I had a little pocket-sized notebook for Inktober. And at the end of October, I thought, this is half empty. I'll just keep it in my jacket pocket and I'll draw every day like I have been doing. And Christmas came and I hadn't used it at all. And the new year after that, what happened? My wife switched her yoga night from one night of the week to another, and I went to see what was available on the night. But we have childcare responsibilities, so I'm like, okay, so now I could go out on whatever that was, Tuesday, and what is there? And there was life drawing, which is like timed poses with a live model, which is something that I had done when I was at school studying art. And so I'd go and do some life drawing. So I would go once a week, and then that experience of checking in once a week reminded me to draw. And then suddenly the book in my pocket started to mean something. And I was drawing more regularly. And I think a lot of the time it isn't what you're describing. It isn't an arena for reaching out. A lot of the time it's therapy for me. So why do I not use an iPad to draw? It's really important for me that this is wet media, fountain pens and watercolor. And those media have minds of their own. They want to run. They want to smudge. They have their own opinions about what should happen. Everything you draw in those media is a collaboration between the artist and the medium. And I think of Faces of Rebellion as extending that collaboration as a collaboration between the medium and the artist and the person who's sitting for the portrait. We're all involved. As you said, the conversation is part of that, but it also creates a spirit of a moment that we're trying to capture. And so it doesn't feel like it's been art for communication's sake until the project started. But the sense in which it is an opportunity for a deep connection, for an encounter between the artist and the sitter, that seems consistent with what it was when I was doing it for myself. It's an encounter for me with myself. It gives me a moment of flow and presence and mindfulness in the present moment. And I think that when I invite, well, I say we because I'm not the only person making these pictures anymore. When we invite a sitter to sit with us for a portrait session, we create an experience where we can all be in the present moment. And that's a lot of the power.
I'm going to say two quick things, and then we're going to find out about these other artists. One is sometimes the path that we start to go down, we don't even realize where it's going to lead, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
We go, holy shit, how did I get... And then you look back and go, well, that made complete sense. Of course, I made 48 right turns and went over a mountain and through a river, figuratively, maybe literally. And then the B thing is, and I talk to so many people about this because I'm a writer, it starts with pen to paper. I've written 2 self-published novels. I have a third one I'm working on. But it begins with me going back to a bunch of note cards, writing out all these thoughts.
Well, by pen, you're not typing these.
This is pen to paper. This is literally what you're talking about, what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about that connectivity. There's something about running the pen over the paper, the brain, the hand, the arm, up to the shoulder, to the neck, to the brain, you know what I mean? To your
Yes,
heart.
exactly.
There's something there. And then you lay it all out on the floor. And I'm writing cozy murder comedy mysteries, which take a little bit of, you can't, anyone who can sit down and type up an outline of that, you're a genius. You got to put a bunch of cards down on the floor and move shit around. That's just how it is. And I say to all my friends all the time who ask me, how do you, I want to write a screenplay. I want to do this. I go get a notebook, go get a small journal, go get a piece of paper and get a pen and start there. Jot notes down. Then you can move on to the next part. And we learned that back in college. We learned that in high school when we did a term paper. We were working with note cards and pens.
It's true. And maybe they do that now.
Yeah, my hypothesis and my thesis. Yeah, all that.
That's interesting.
There's a connectivity.
I did a PhD in programming language. Sorry, I talked over you.
Yes, you do. Talk about that. You because you're a software engineer.
Yeah, so I did a PhD in programming language theory in the early 2000s. And there was a lot of maths in it, a lot of algebra in it. And that work was done on sheets of A4 paper with a soft pencil. And my favorite tool was a 0.5 millimeter clutch pencil with a soft lead, like a 2B or a 4B lead in it. And I'm now revisiting that. At the time, it just seemed like the way to get the work done. I struggled with maths as a kid. I'm dyslexic. I struggled with maths as a kid, and it was a strange place to find myself doing a PhD in my mid-30s and doing a load of maths. And I was like, I have to get through this, and these are the tools that enable me to do it. But now that you've raised this point, holding that pen in your hand is so important. And like sometimes if I wanted to read and understand a paper or a book that had mathematical formula in it, I would copy them out. I wouldn't synthesize anything new, but I would copy them out because that puts it through. They become a somatic thing. They put it through the body, like they go through my brain into my gut brain and like out through my hands. And I wanted to say when you were saying this before, about the importance of picking up a pen, I choose to do the editing work. There is some editing work from the notes that I take with these portraits. Before I write them up around the face, they need to be about 2/3 of a page of A4 paper in order to fit around a face. And I need to pick the right words. And sometimes I don't want to change the voice of the person, but sometimes the grammar needs to be changed just to make them flow together. And I could do that work like elsewhere in my life where I write, I type. I could do that work on a computer with a keyboard. But I choose to do that work with a fountain pen on a piece of paper. I write the whole thing out, everything, word for word, to make sure I understand it. Then I write it out again. I start to pick bits and do what you do. I don't use cards, but I'm saying this bit goes next to this bit. I'm arranging it by hand. And it feels like by using my body to do that editing work, the choices that I'm making take me back to the moment that I spent together with the activist that I was drawing and bring me again into the current moment and honors the experience that we shared together. Like, it's not just an intellectual thing where I'm picking the words that say the right thing, editing for my newspaper. I'm trying to get back into that space again.
Tell us about the other artists that have become involved.
With great pleasure. So at the beginning of last year, 20? Yeah. Well, I started in 20, maybe it wasn't. Well, we're in 25 now. The whole project started in 22 in August. And I think it may have been 23, where not as a New Year's resolution, but during the early part of the year, I was thinking about what my intentions were for the year. And my intention for the year was to get the numbers up. People would say to me, Faces of Rebellion, why are you doing this? Are there going to be exhibitions? Is there going to be a book? And I would say, well, yeah, probably. I imagine there will be exhibitions. And when you get to 100, a book becomes possible. And when you get to 200, a book becomes unstoppable because then there's almost no editing to do. You could put them on back to back and publish it. But those things are enabled by having the numbers. And maybe around that time I had, 10 or 12, maybe fewer portraits. My job this year is to get the numbers up. And so I was doing the things that I said to you. I was going along to actions and to the social meetups that activists hold around their actions, introducing myself, standing up, shouting to everybody, saying, "Hey, I'm Mark. This is Faces of Rebellion. Come and have a look. This is why we're doing it." And that was my intention for the year. And somewhere along that year, where my intention nominally was increasing the number of portraits, I decided that we needed a website. So then I was getting the numbers up and also building the website. And you know what? I forgot the question, Steve.
Well, other artists got involved somehow.
Yes, thank you.
So what you're going to tell us all is you cheat. You're cheating and using other people. No,
No,
go ahead.
Exactly. So from the moment, that there was a website, once there was a website, as I was making the design decisions for what to put on there, I was thinking to a time when there would be other people doing this work. And that relates back to a conversation that I had with one of my early sitters, where we were sat in a coffee shop somewhere, and I was just taking the bulldog clips off the notebook and getting ready to show this guy his portrait. And he pulled out his iPhone and pointed it in my face and said, "So, Mr. Skipper, what are we doing here?" And so I had an unprepared interview. Imagine an unprepared interview.
The tables were turned.
But it's like you and I now, right? Here we are responding to the moment.
Right.
And so what I heard myself, sometimes you don't know what you think until you hear yourself say it out loud. And what I heard myself saying then was, my dream for this is that it becomes an international phenomenon, that it isn't just me, that you can go online, search for hashtag Faces of Rebellion, and see the faces and hear the stories of activists fighting for the climate all around the world. And these days, I tend to add on to that. You know, when I hear, which I do, things like 26 Nigerian activists imprisoned for resisting Shell, that's a statistic. And I would love to be able to go and see their faces. I can't make those faces. I don't intend to be the only artist making those faces. I would love for their local artists to be doing this work. I would love to be able to see those faces and hear their stories of people who are making, some of them are making sacrifices, they're all making sacrifices of their time or their liberty. How do we hear those stories? So that's what I always wanted it to become. So when I wrote the website, there was a button that says, "I'm an activist, draw me," and there's another button next to it that says, "I'm an artist and I want to get involved." I just put it on there thinking this is the right thing to do, but I wasn't soliciting artists. And I went to a big, I think it was 10,000 people protest in London by the Houses of Parliament, run by Extinction Rebellion. It was branded as the big one, and it really was. Lots of organizations who had never been in protests before came along. I was down there with my daughter and some other families from our local neighborhood. And sometimes I met people that I knew. And I saw next to the iconic Westminster buildings, two stewards in pink viz vests standing in the middle of the road, eating their lunch out of plastic, like food container, eating their lunch out of Tupperware boxes. And I took a photograph of them from way down low to capture the skyline of the buildings behind them. And then I went and showed them. And then they asked me what I was doing. And I showed them Faces of Rebellion. And I had those pieces of paper that I told you that I printed up to explain to people what's going on. They have a QR code on. And so these two stewards turned out to be, one of them or their friends were from the Netherlands. And a bunch of kids came over and they all photographed. Oh, this is cool. They photographed the QR code. And I think, although I haven't traced it back, I think from that event, the link got shared on a Netherlands secure chat channel for people who were thinking of coming over to the UK to attend the big one protest. And there, my first collaborating artist, whose artist name is Solutionary, found this. She was unable to go along to the protest, but was on the channel and wishing she could go and wishing there was some way she could contribute. And suddenly here was a thing saying, "I'm an artist, I want to get involved." And so she was the first person to click the "I'm an artist" button. And again, like I said, you'd never get these conversion rates.
And you never expect to, like we were just talking about. You never expected it.
Well, like my heart, this is the thing. It doesn't feel like I'm controlling this. My heart always knew that this was the right thing to do. Like the right thing to do is to put a button on here because people will want to get involved. But if I had said, "Oh, I'm going to create a project and people are going to join," wouldn't even be a helpful attitude. But having done the work, having said, "Here is a thing, now it exists, people can look at it," and the right person will look at it and recognize it for what it is and say, "Yeah, I have something to bring to this."
You have created a community out of this.
Yeah, well, now I just sent out an invitation to the next sort of bi-monthly video call for the artists, and I think there were 6 invites on that thing. People say to me, "Is there going to be a book? Are there going to be exhibitions?" Yeah, I've had some of the pieces in local art exhibitions around where I live because I'm connected into the art community, but also last year in November, we filled the wall in the local Recovery Cafe. And Recovery Cafe obviously felt like the right place to be because the roots of this project come from Recovery Cafe in San Jose, as I explained earlier on. So I printed off, because they're in a sketchbook and they're not the originals, I printed off a bunch of these and framed them up and got them onto the walls. And we had them up for a month. We had a private viewing. People came in, sparked lots of conversations. Events were held in that space. There was climate conversations events held in that space, and it became the right place for it. And at the end of that month, I took them down, and that was the end of November. But I already had been having a conversation because I went in protest about the way that insurance companies continue to provide insurance for fossil fuel industries, which are destroying the planet, in London. And while we were there, we were actually in a blocked road between the Lloyd's of London building on one side and WTW insurers on the other, and we had the roadblock, I did another portrait. There was a guy from Uganda called Nicholas. You can find his portrait on the website or on Instagram. And he gave a fabulous speech on the microphone, and I went and sat with him while he was eating his lunch and made his portrait. And we'd been sitting on the floor, just cross-legged on the ground doing this, and I went and sat somewhere to get a more comfortable seat, and the lady that I sat next to saw what I was doing and said, "Would you like to put these up in a cafe in London?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I would." And while I was saying that, she said, "Because I've got one." I said, what have you got?" I run a cafe in South London, and I'd love to put these up. So they went up in Cambridge in November. They went up in South London in January, and then they came back to my house. And I thought, well, that's going to be the end. And then recently, people got in touch, again, through the website, clicking the button, saying, "Hi, this is Extinction Rebellion in West Wales, in Cardigan in West Wales. And we wonder whether it would be possible to put on an exhibition of the Faces of Rebellion." Now, I think the reason they knew about it is I have met one of their number at a protest and made his portrait. So I think they didn't discover me from cold. I think they had a connection. But it was their idea to put on an exhibition. They said, "Would that be possible?" I said, "You've picked the right time to do this because I now have all these framed pieces that we could send." And then a couple of days later, I came home from work and my inbox was full of messages of them trying to contact me because the art gallery in the high street of their town had had a cancellation in a couple of weeks, and they'd booked it, and they were like, "Can you get the pieces out to us for this?" And I'll just tell that story because it's worth telling. I said, "Yeah, sure, of course I'll get them out to you. How big is the space?" "Oh, it's 9 meters by 7. It's like, wow. In that case, wait, I'm going to get some more printed before we send them up so that they're not lost. They had it for a week. They had volunteers in the space every day talking to people. Books, leaflets explaining the seriousness of the climate crisis were there. People came in and engaged with it. And one of the things they had in that space was an easel set up with some watercolors on for kids to play with while they came in. And in a quiet moment, one of the volunteers painted a portrait of one of the other volunteers and then got him to put his words around the outside. And that's not the next artist to join, but that's one of the most recent artists to join. That's Caroline's work. And the words around the outside are in the Welsh language. And then afterwards, she did another one. And so we now have 2 in Welsh from this spontaneous trip to Wales that the portraits did. And after they came down from Cardigan, they went to an eco centre in another part of Wales, and then they've switched to another Welsh town in the meantime for another couple of weeks. And I guess they'll be heading back at some point, but there was a conversation about maybe somebody in Cardiff would like to take them before they come back. Yeah, are there going to be exhibitions? Yeah, people will look at them and see them for what they are, and then they will make those things happen. Is there going to be a book? One day somebody will look at them and say, this should be a book. And that person will be a person with the skills like you're talking about. You have the skills to make this podcast. You can edit, you can write, you can invite people. There'll be somebody who has the connections and the skills, and they'll say, we could make this into a book. And then it won't be a struggle to make that happen. It'll be pushing on an open door because they will have seen it for what it is. So there are 6 of us making these now, 1 in the Netherlands and a bunch in the UK. And I would love for artists around the world to join in. We're kind of set up. There's a little bit of infrastructure that I need to do on the website, but we're kind of set up to encourage and support people to do this work.
And we keep talking about the website, so plug the website, please.
Okay, this is facesofrebellion.org.
And where are you on social media?
So we also have an Instagram, which is faces_of_rebellion. Nobody wants to type that rubbish, but if you go to facesofrebellion.org, there's an Instagram icon at the top. You can click and it takes you through. And I guess that World Gone Good will provide some kind of link back to Faces of Rebellion on Instagram too.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and so those are really nice because both of them, I mean, as I said earlier on, the Instagram feed is just a grid. There are some reels on, but they're on a separate reel grid because to me it's really iconic that it's just a grid of these faces, people shoulder by shoulder, which is how this is how protests feel. They feel like the world brought together, standing shoulder by shoulder. People from different backgrounds, people who might not normally meet, people with different motives, different motivations, different appetites for risk, standing shoulder by shoulder together in community, fighting for what they know is necessary and good and right to keep life on the planet.
The final 2 questions we ask of every guest in our show. Question number 1 can go back to anything we've talked about or anything you want to say. The question is this: who inspires you?
Yeah, thanks. So I understand why you said maybe you can go back to somebody else, because obviously there is a large extent to which I am inspired by Suhita Shirodkar. I would love to be as loose. Oh, my word, her art is so fantastic. I would love my art to be as loose as hers. And at the same time, I guess I'm also inspired by, it would be hard to pick one name, but as I said, this project began with friends in my local neighborhood who would identify as climate activists. And as a community, as a group, being with them feels like something different. Maybe it's not so different from the communities that used to exist back before social media destroyed the fabric of society. But I'm inspired by every activist I've ever met, everyone I've stood shoulder by shoulder with on an action. I love them. That's why I want to have these encounters with them, for us to open our hearts together and to tell their story. I mean, go back and look at the feed, especially the early few, because those were close friends, inspirational people, fabulous people. I'll tell you one that I want to pick out. The portrait that's not in the book is Marcus. He was in prison when I did his portrait. I was checking to see whether it was possible to do one on a prison visit. Turns out that there are strict rules about taking stuff into a prison because I think largely of trying to control drug access. So if you send a letter in, they're likely to photocopy it and give the photocopy in case you soaked the paper in something that can be smoked, right? Like there's a whole thing. So the security was, don't take anything in, not even your car keys. Dogs will sniff you on the way in to make sure you're not carrying anything. So there was no way. I said, okay, I'd set this up to come and do your portrait, but I can't do your portrait. But having set it up to come and do a prison visit, I'm certainly going to still show up and do the visit. So I just went to visit him with no expectations whatsoever. And it turns out that the security for stuff going out is much lower. So he brought me a stub of pencil and a folded piece of paper, and we did that one in there. And I'm inspired by him because of the amazing things that he did, but also because on that visit, sitting next to me, were two members of the Extinction Rebellion group that he used to be in way back before he did the action that ended up with him being imprisoned. And they were talking about protecting trees in London. There was a London plane tree that had been planned for being cut down. I don't know the details, but there's a big problem with people preventatively cutting down trees. Nothing wrong with the trees, but they think that somehow they might undermine houses. And so as an insurance security thing, they'll remove the trees. And Marcus slept in the tree in a hammock every night. I forget how many, but like over a year or nearly a year. And these two women were telling the story of how they remembered those times. And so, sure, the things that Marcus said and has done, and he's got all kinds of struggles now, now that he's no longer in prison, there are still problems for him. He's an inspiring man. But the important thing was meeting him in community with these members of the activist group that he had been a part of, really demonstrated the connection and the connectivity that the activist community has. And that's truly inspiring.
And the final question is not a question. It is a statement to finish. It can be anything you want to say. And it goes like this. Tell me something good.
Right, because it's world gone good. Tell me something good. Oh, what? Do you know what? There are hundreds, thousands of people. That's just in the UK. There are thousands of people who are willing to get up from their seats, to go out from their houses, to take time off from their life, from their social media and their TV, to go maybe take time from their work or their other occupations and go out and stand shoulder to shoulder on the street. Maybe they've spent hours preparing beautiful placards with strong and powerful, witty, engaging messages. Maybe they're shouting. Maybe they're making music. Maybe they're doing theater performances on location that engage people. Maybe they're in costume. The fact that those people, thousands of them, show up and turn up every day, every week. When there's a action, they're there. Sometimes the same faces, sometimes surprising new faces. Enormous amounts of creativity, prepared in collaboration with one another. Huge amounts of determination. That's something truly good. Whether we get through this crisis or not, how steeply we go into the disaster area, we can't predict. But the fact that there exist communities of people, maybe even people who wouldn't otherwise spend time together, willing to give up their time and work together and trust one another, that's truly inspiring. That's your world going good.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing your good art, activism, and self. Next time on World Gone Good.
I started it in my garage. I have a little saying on my whiteboard that says every large business started with one person in their garage.
We are lighting it up with good guest Lindsay Gould from Candle Bar 111. We are talking scents and vessels and science. We love science and what it means to follow your passion and take chances. Lindsay's story may just inspire you to go for that thing you've been thinking about going for yourself. I can't wait for you to hear this one, which we recorded in person over coffee, so be prepared for the in-person kind of things like literal trains going by in the not too far distance. Until then, be good.